So this has been quite a day coming, and we are here to celebrate our dear friend, our mentor, our wise woman, our love, Alice Waco. Welcome to Christ Church United Methodist. And I first want to thank so many people who have helped us. Dave Waco is here, Alice's brother, who he just turned 93 a couple of days ago. So thank you for being here, Dave. Thank you also to other family members, especially Michelle Waco, who I asked, when I called her first and I said, Michelle, we've got this event coming up. She said, well, we'll do all the photographs. Me and my partner. And so we have these gorgeous photographs here from Michelle Waco. And also the folks from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. I love that name, Oconomowoc. They have done, Nancy and Perry have done such a great job, and you'll be seeing all the things that they have done. So welcome again to Christ Church United Methodist. Make yourselves at home. Our pastor, Lindsay Kerr, is not here today. She is with her wife, Diana, in the South. They are going to adopt a child. The child was just born. And so they said, oh, sorry, we just can't make this, because Lindsay Kerr was supposed to open. So she said, well, would you mind reading what I wrote? And I said, I would be honored to read what you wrote. So this is what she says. Alice Waco's life can and will be remembered anywhere, but it's good and fitting that we're gathered in this place today, because a life as radical as Alice's deserves to be remembered in a space of radical faith, radical action, and radical inclusion. And that's this church at its core. Christ Church was built by conscientious objectors, environmentalists, and lesbians among its founders and longest-serving members. On the very sidewalk outside, members of Christ Church protested the invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Iraq again and again. In the parking lot, church members provided security after a wave of anti-Semitic hate threatened Congregation Shomrei Torah, who shared this space with us for many years. In this sanctuary, Christ Church voted to become the first ceasefire congregation in Sonoma County. Screened films about topics ranging from Gaza to Christian nationalism, and hosted direct action trainings led by many of you. We share this space with many community organizations that we love. And among them is the Emmaus community, a community from which I am, and it's home to many rabble-rousers. And Alice Waco was spiritually among us. So welcome. Let's be present in this time of abundant remembrance and bittersweet celebration. And so it is my honor to introduce our Congressman Mike Thompson to the stage. Come on up, Mike.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I've got to tell you, it's a high honor to be asked to speak at such an incredible person's memorial. This is just, it's sad we've lost her, and it's an honor to be here, and I know you all feel the same way. I first met Alice in 1988 when I was a candidate running for the California State Senate. She was a great supporter, and in that campaign, I thought I got to know her pretty well. But I found out recently that I was wrong. I knew Alice as an educator, as a peace activist. I knew her as the founder of the Peace and Justice Center, and I knew her as a former nun. I knew her as someone whose values were impeccable, whose commitment to justice and our community was unshakable, and I knew her as someone with a heart as big as Santa Rosa. But after reading Carrie Benefield's 5-volume obituary for Alice, in the Press-Democrat, I found out that there were a few things that I didn't know. And I found out exactly how even more accomplished, how even more impressive, and how even more talented Alice was. I learned that back in high school, she competed in the pentathlon. Now, confession, I didn't know what a pentathlon was, so I looked it up. And, you know, I was a little surprised, because we know Alice was a runner, and I could obviously see her participating in some of the different events in a pentathlon. But this laser portion, I don't know if it was the same when she was doing it as it is now, but it requires running and shooting a gun. Now, I could not imagine Alice shooting a gun. That just absolutely blew me away. In 1980, we know that Alice served as the president of the Santa Rosa Teachers Association, and that was during a very tumultuous time with an incredible strike taking place. And as some of us remember, in the 1980s were a challenging time for education. There were big budget issues, there were big classroom size issues, and there was major reform in education, K-12 education, coming down from the state legislature in Sacramento. And there was a particular bumper sticker that I remember that was on a lot of cars around not only Santa Rosa and Sonoma County, but all over California. And it was pretty simple. It said, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Yeah. Yeah, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Well, Alice got that. She knew it. She understood it. And she knew the true value of education. She knew that investing in education would be beneficial not only for the students that she loved, but for our greater community. And she didn't lead teachers on the strike to line her own pockets. She did it to better educate, to make sure her students got a better education, and to support her fellow teachers, and to make our future a much brighter place for everyone. And she, yeah. And she won. She won. And Santa Rosa and our kids' education was better off because of that victory. She was also the driving force in establishing Santa Rosa's sister city program with Cherkasy, Ukraine. And that was in 1990, and I got to think that it's even more important that we have that relationship today as it was when she started it. And what a visionary she was. She spent time fighting for education in Nicaragua because she knew that an educated population around the world leads to a better and a more peaceful world for all of us. And she traveled to and from Susanville to work with inmates at the High Desert State Prison because she knew that everybody deserves a second chance. And this is probably a good time to point out that she was a criminal herself. As we know, Alice was arrested on numerous occasions. She got into what my dear friend and former colleague John Lewis used to say, and what we're being reminded of today, she got into good trouble. That's an applause line. Now, one of the times that Alice, or maybe it was a number of times that Alice got arrested on one particular issue, really stands out to me. And I thought about that a lot, and I took great comfort in it, quite honestly. And it was in 2003, she was arrested for blocking the intersection at College and Mendocino Avenue to protest the Iraq War. And she knew the war in Iraq was wrong, and she wasn't afraid to stand up and speak out against it. Now, I'm a combat veteran, and I know the horrors of war, and like I would bet most combat veterans, I believe strongly in what John Kennedy said, and that is mankind must put an end to war before war puts an end to mankind. She didn't need President Kennedy to tell her that. She knew it. So as your congressman, when that war was about to break out, I went to Iraq to see for myself, to be on the ground, to understand what was going on, why we were where we were. And I saw what I saw, and I came back a staunch opponent of that war. I spoke out and I voted against that war. And as can be expected, I took a lot of criticism. And I say as expected because we were just attacked on American soil. And so it's understandable why some would think different than Alice and different than me. And I found out that it was really lonely standing up in opposition to a war after we've been attacked. But I tell you, I felt a lot of company and I felt a lot of support knowing that Alice was standing with me and with all of us on this. And that wasn't the last time she was arrested. You know, the Press Democrat reported in 2004 that Susan Swartz called Alice on the phone for a moment, for a comment, and Bill answered and said that Alice wasn't available because she was out getting arrested. She did all that she could to make sure that right would prevail. And when I was thinking about being here today, I recalled the words of the late Pope Francis. It's okay to be Catholic for a minute, right? Okay. Pope Francis spoke to Congress in 2015, and he reminded every one of us in that address, and I'll quote, "A good political leader always opts to initiate processes rather than possessing space." In other words, don't take up space. Don't take up space. Alice didn't. She was all action. She worked her whole life to right the wrongs that harmed so many of our community, our country, and our planet. And Alice was involved until the absolute very end. As we know, she attended the Santa Rosa No Kings rally on June 14th, just days before her 94th birthday and just 15 days before she left us. We're all lucky to carry Alice's lessons with us. As we mourn her, let's promise to let those lessons be a call to action for all of us. We can't afford to take up space. In Alice's words, it's not enough to just be passionate. Being involved gave her hope, and she gave us hope. So let's all commit to taking action every day to help make others' lives better. That's the legacy that Alice leaves behind. Thank you.
It gives me really great pleasure to introduce Perry, Nancy, come on up here. They are from Bill McGee's family, but fell in love with Alice as soon as Bill McGee did. They came all the way from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, to be here.
Hi, everyone. First of all, this is a short remembrance letter to my Aunt Alice. First of all, she was much more than an aunt, Alice. She was an inspiration in our lives for a very long time.
Alice, you always made time for our family whenever you and Uncle Bill would visit Wisconsin, and our three boys learned early on just how important you two were. We also have decades of memories of our two-leg trips to California, so to speak, because we would visit my sister in the Bay Area as well as coming up to see Alice. And in fact, my sister Karen and Sharon are here today. They, of course, just like Alice always does, brings them in, and they became fans as well.
In the later years, our son Brandon, who's here today, moved to LA and was married by you to Jasmine, who's here today. And I'm sure there are many others in the room who were married either by my Aunt Alice or my Uncle Bill. Can we have a quick show of hands? Wow, look at all that. Yay! So many.
Of course, not too long after Brandon was married, we had a grandson named Robin. So then our California trips had three legs. And we always had a blast, always came home exhausted, and in my case, with a bad back.
We wanted to share a few of the bullets of the many memories with you, Alice. First.
The first one is very fitting to what you were just talking about. She greeted us at the curb in Santa Rosa in 2003, wearing a button on her dress that said, "They're lying to us." And that was my first reaction was,
Yeah, she was right. But we could not wait to hear about her many adventures, which seem endless to us.
yeah, in fact, I'm sorry, I was afraid I would be this way up here, but that picture is taken from 2003 when we did a cross-country trip from California to Wisconsin and kind of hit all the national parks along the way. And unfortunately, we had to crop Karen out of the picture. Sorry, Karen, so I could fit it up there. But she was in there, and I got a really good smile out of Alice because as I was taking the picture, I said, "Alice, someday your head will be carved up there."
Yeah. And then there was the sorting of thousands of my Uncle Bill's photos with you and my son Brandon and Jasmine several years after that tragic loss of my Uncle Bill from that bicycle accident. Perry used the photos along with some of Uncle Bill's poems to create the photo book. And watching you come back from that tragedy was just part of your inspiration to us.
No doubt.
No doubt, yeah.
Another quick memory is just, I would call Alice after any really good Rachel show. We were both a Rachel
Both
fan.
fans.
Alice and I, if we got together on the deck, we could just talk for hours about politics and current events.
And ours.
I really miss that.
And then lastly, we celebrated her 94th birthday, the 94th lap around the sun, together in spring, along with her cousins Angela and Shelley. There was chocolate cake, ice cream, games, and a healthy dose of laughter. We had a really great time.
And of course, we did not know it at the time, but that would be, it was a 4-day birthday party for us, and it would be our last adventure with Alice. Although I must admit, we did give her longer hugs when we left.
Yep.
Because we could sense her light dimming.
But you know, everyone, her light was her presence, Aunt Alice. and it showed brightly wherever you went. The crowd, of course, at this gathering is evidence of the impact you had on so many lives.
When we spoke, Alice, we could feel your embrace. And I'm sure that's true for anyone. We love you and we miss you.
But she was much more than an aunt, and you continued to be my inspiration. As many of you know, I am hard of hearing, and I would like you to join us in giving Aunt Alice the I love you sign for the heart, yes, for the deaf community. Oh, look at that. I love you, Aunt Alice.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
And then the next speaker is Angela, of course, who's from the other side of the family.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry.
It's a very precious time for me to be able to celebrate her. And I grew up, my mother and Alice were cousins. They were only 3 months apart, and they grew up together. And I knew of Alice. She was epic, but I didn't get to spend much time with her because she was busy being a nun far away. In the 70s, I moved to San Francisco. And one day, I lived right on Dolores Park, and I was having, I decided to have a yard sale. This is very ADD. Right before a protest march, in which the protest was meeting at Dolores Park, and then we were going to march, and I believe it was an anti-nuclear protest. And I was outside my flat having a sale, and this person came walking up to me with their head bowed down like this, and said, "Excuse me, can I use your bathroom?" And it was Alice, and she didn't see me or recognize me. I started screaming, "Alice Marie, Alice Marie!" And I don't even know if she recognized me. But she and I joined the protest together, and it led to a wonderful life of our cousin friendship, and I'm so grateful. It was so special to me to have a family member who I had so much in common with, unlike some of my other family members. And so I treasured everything I got to do with her. And about 1.5 years ago, I spent time with her, and I asked her to tell me some stories about her life. And I would like to share with you, in her own words, some of those poignant moments that I think summarize Alice. Hopefully this will work.
No promises.
My mother was called Aunt Allie, and she'd say, "Aunt Allie gave you so much independence, Alice, so now you're an independent woman." She let me go up to the mountains with a bunch of girls, as long as I was with girls. And we went to Lake Arrowhead as 10th graders, hitchhiked all the way up there. So I did have a lot of independence, but he totally changed my life. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know he did.
This is about Bill.
Because I became a lot more sensitive to people. Mm-hmm. Just observing him, I mean, it was so wonderful being loved by somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd never had that in my whole life. His beauty was beyond human. It's almost like God had sent him to me. Mm-hmm. We took the vote, and they voted to go on strike, which I'm sure was a shock to the district, you know. And we were on strike for 6 weeks, not short time. Wow. And it was hard negotiating, and we had 96% of the teachers out on strike.
Wow.
If the teachers don't go in, if you do not end the strike before Christmas, and the teachers don't come back after Christmas the first day, they're all fired. And our person from the state said, well, then you do know you're going to have the whole state of California on strike.
Coming
if
after
you do
you.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they settled. Yeah, it was quite a challenge. But it gave me, since I was the president and had to do all the leading and speech giving and all that stuff, be interviewed by the paper, it gave me at that time a lot more confidence in myself, that I could go forth and do things.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that everybody is drawn to community, just like the atoms and the molecules of the beginning of our earth, you know, way back, beginning not just of our earth, but the whole universe. And it seems like that's what nature wants to do. It wants to bond. It wants to bring things together.
Nice.
And when you think about happiness, that's usually where it takes place, bringing people together. It isn't usually just sitting, you know, by yourself and all of a sudden you've brought happiness. You know? It's more that it's a community event. So I've lived my life believing very much in community, and that we all need to come together and care about each other.
She would love this. I would like to introduce the next speaker is Susan Martin, 50 years of friendship and a fellow activist.
I'm sure everybody can hear me because I can hear me. I'm going to start with a poem. When I'm an old woman, I shall wear purple with a red hat which doesn't go and doesn't suit me. I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves. I shall sit down on the pavement when I'm tired and run my stick along the public railings and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain, pick flowers in other people's gardens, and learn to spit. I've known Alice for over 50 years. We were very rare female chemistry teachers together in the 70s. We were union presidents together, although I didn't have to do strike. We got active in peace together. We started the Educators for Social Responsibility here in Sonoma County, and I went on to do the national one. And we got involved in politics together. I mean, we just did everything together. What I want to talk about is not one specific thing, but one specific thing about Alice. Alice made communities. She turned groups of people into a community. The first time I went to her house, she introduced me to her neighbors. She had this little community right around her house. When she moved back to the massage parlor, she created a community on the alleyway. Is Jonathan here? Jonathan knows about that. I was just so flabbergasted to see that. And then I thought about the work we did in the NEA, the union. We used to have a convention every year, and 12 to 15,000 teachers would show up to it. And you'd walk in there and you'd go, oh, wow, they're all like me. It was wonderful. And in 1982, 3, somewhere in there, we formed the NEA Peace and Justice Caucus. And Alice took it upon herself to do membership. And she went to every state delegation. They had delegations like you see in the Democratic Convention. And she got people to do membership in their state, and they'd get their $10 and their names and bring it to us. We made a lot of money. And then every year, the people from the states who she'd recruited would come to us in California. Where's Alice? We're ready to do this stuff. You know, she was amazing. So purple was her. I just wanted to say, first thing I want to say, how many of us got naked for Alice? There should be more hands, come on. I think my husband thinks that the reason Alice and I were such good friends was because she massaged me a lot, and I'll take that. So the next speaker is Andy Witthohn. He's also active in the union, and he's going to talk about things he did.
I gotta say that between Mike and Susan, many of my remarks have already been made, so I will not spend a lot of time on some of them. First of all, I want to say, Wacky, it's good to see you. I know that I love you and I miss you, as do so many of the people here today and those who are watching online. You may wonder about the word Wacky. I'm an inveterate nicknamer, and that was the name Alice Waco had between her relationship with me, was Wacky. The definition of wacky in Webster's is absurdly, amusingly eccentric, or irrational. Well, while her dress to some may have seemed eccentric, Alice was anything but irrational. Anyway, she and I had lots of fun with the nickname Wacky. My assignment today is to talk about Alice's union circle, one of the many concentric circles of involvement in Alice's life's journey. Once again, referring to Webster's, there are many definitions of union, and Alice falls into most of them. My favorite is the first: an act or instance of uniting two or more things into one. That was Alice's life's work, as most of you know, because you were in one of those circles and she united you with others toward a single unifying goal or purpose. But I believe that I was expected to talk about her union labor activities. She was a 20-plus year member of the Santa Rosa Teachers Association, the National Education Association, and the California Teachers Association. I was always a few years behind Alice in my union experiences, so I had to do a little research on my friend. But I struck out with the California Teachers Association, the Santa Rosa Teachers Association, and the Santa Rosa City Schools. Not one of those could tell me Alice's first year of teaching or her first year of union membership. Fortunately, Tony Negri, are you here? Tony Negri, who was Alice's principal at Santa Rosa High School, turned me on to a website, Santa Rosa High School Foundation. In that website, there are photographs from every yearbook in that school's history. And I was amazed. Now, I got to tell you that some people told me Alice first started in 1973-74. But in the 73-74 yearbook, they decided not to put the faculty photos in there. They only had the student photos. But I did find her in 1974-75, a lovely photograph that I blew up for you, and I'll be happy to share that with you later on. So she started either in 73 or 74 or 74-75, and a short 4 or 5 years later was elected president of the Santa Rosa Teachers Association, and was reelected in 79-80 when she led the strike that has already been so well spoken about. Also in the room today was Alice's strike captain, Mr. Ted Milkoff, who succeeded Alice as the president of the Santa Rosa Teachers Association. In addition to SRTA, Alice was a member of the Sonoma County Educators Council, which was all the presidents of all the locals in Sonoma County who met monthly to talk about the conditions of teaching and how they could be improved and to work together in consensus. She also was a part of the Redwood Service Center Council, which was a larger organization from Del Norte County down through Marin County and included Napa, Solano, and Mendocino. And that meant 4 times a year, and talked about how state policies could be improved. I'm getting a time signal that I have a minute left. Anyway, Alice was very involved on the state, local, and regional levels of education. And as you heard from Susan Martin, as a delegate to the NEA National Convention, which is called the RA, Alice was not only helping recruit members of the Peace and Justice Caucus, but in 1993, 6 months after she'd been released from the classroom to work on Bill Clinton's presidential campaign, Alice was awarded the Applegate Doros Peace and International Understanding Award, recognizing her efforts to further international understanding among Americans, her contribution to international peace, and inspiring youth to become involved in peace. 3 years later, in 1996, Alice retired from those organizations, but she continued to be a member of the Retired Teachers Association. And in fact, a mere 2 or 3 weeks before she passed from our presence, Alice attended one of those meetings. But she couldn't stay for the whole meeting because she had to leave to go to the Peace and Justice. That was Alice with those overlapping concentric circles. And as I leave the podium today, I want to remind you, as you think in your daily life about decisions you have to make, don't forget to ask yourself, what would Alice do? Okay? I'd like to turn this over to Toby Laferty, who was a close colleague of Alice's. One of the things that she did after she left teaching in the classroom was to go to teach with Alternatives to Violence Prevention with Toby Laferty, and he's going to tell you a lot about that. Toby.
Thank you. I'm honored to be able to speak about Alice, our dear friend, and speak about an organization that she really appreciated a lot. And I know there's a lot of folks here who are part of AVP and online from AVP. And AVP is Alternatives to Violence Project. It's an organization dedicated to helping people effectively to resolve conflicts creatively and nonviolently. AVP started in 1975 in New York among a group of inmates, and a bunch of peace activists got together and tried to create workshops around creating peace and a more comfortable society. These workshops have been witnessed and have transformed lives of people inside. The men that she worked with and we all work with express emotions inside. They hug people of different communities that isn't typically allowed inside prisons as far as the prison politics. There's a lot of laughter and fun that happen in these workshops. So it's not really about teaching, it's about experiencing and about enjoying each other and learning from each other. And a lot of the participants leave the workshops with comments like, I didn't even remember being in prison this weekend while I was in these workshops. And some say powerful words like, I feel like I'm a human again. And Alice brought that power to the workshop. Alice was a huge part of the organization, especially up here in Northern California. She started in the early 1990s, and she was doing workshops here in Sonoma County and in San Quentin. And that's where I had the pleasure to meet her in 1997. And we did a couple workshops together there, and then when I got out, I was able to be a part of the Santa Rosa Council, and we did a lot of workshops up there. In AVP, we use adjective names to affirm who we are and to guide us into becoming better than we are. And at that time, it was Adventurous Alice, and she later turned her name into Anchored Alice, which seemed appropriate. At that time, I was Turbo Toby, and as you can see, I've changed it to Take a Breath Toby. As we get older, we change things. Alice was my mentor, and she was a mentor to hundreds of men and women inside prison and outside prison. She did start and helped start with Ann Boone, the 2 prisons up in Susanville, and she would every month drive up there for 6 hours. Snow and ice did not stop them, and stayed in one of the shabbiest hotels. Oh, I hope they're not watching. But because it was inexpensive, and we didn't want to, they wanted to be very mindful of the cost. And then in her early 80s, she reopened up Old Folsom Prison with another facilitator. And as you all know, Alice was passionate and had strong views. She didn't hesitate to express them. I always say that Alice told me when I was doing something wrong, when I was wrong, and she'd tell me if I'm doing something wrong when I wasn't wrong. And I had to accept both. One of the co-facilitators that she worked with said that she came to me and reported to me that some of the men are afraid of Alice. And her honesty was her charm. And if you were tough enough to take it, you learned a lot from Alice. For me personally, Alice became family. In Santa Rosa, we did a lot of workshops here, or not a lot, but a lot of workshops in the Sonoma area. And we worked together as a small council, especially when her husband died, Bill. And she was patient with me during my life lessons, and she was a big part of that group. Never did she see any of the men and women that she worked with as less than. We were all fully capable human beings. When I moved to Washington State, I had to take a U-Haul full of lab equipment up to Seattle, and Alice says, well, I want to come up because I'm going to go visit Susan. And I said, you know, it was a U-Haul truck. It wasn't that comfortable, but we drove up there in this U-Haul in 2014 and had an incredible time. We even tried to climb up over the Crater Lake. It was still a lot of snow then, and we didn't have a whole lot of luck. But I left her behind in Susan's capable hands in Oregon. And then last year, I was able to talk her into going to our state gathering. That wasn't that one. That was another time. That one I just happened upon a nun's outfit. And I thought, well, I want to go as a nun during the Halloween. But I thought I better call Alice to make sure she's comfortable with that. I didn't want to offend her. She was so excited about it. She had Bill's outfit still, or his uniform. I'm not sure what it's called. But so she wore that, and then we wore a lot of blingy bling stuff, and then we had a little devil that was with us. So it was a mixed crowd. She was honored and really appreciated at the last gathering last year. She was one of our longest still practicing facilitator. The next spring, I talked her into coming to do a workshop in Berkeley with me in the community. And she came down, she said, this is going to be the last one I do before I die. And lo and behold, she did 2 more up here, well, another one in Berkeley and another one up here in Santa Rosa, because you can't keep her down. She brought passion into the participants, and we all felt honored in wisdom at the depth of her experience as a human being and as a facilitator. During the Berkeley workshop, we honored her for her 30 years of volunteering in AVP. All right, I'm out of here. For the last 2 years, I've been coming up and visiting her once a month for breakfast, and then we would go shopping, go to Costco or Walgreens or something really important like that, and it was really a great thing. I miss her. I miss her very much, but I'm really glad to be a part of her global community as one of the persons part of the community. I would like to now invite Pat Sabo up, who is the Sonoma Democratic Party chair. She was a Healdsburg teacher, and she was a union activist, another union member.
Thank you very much. And as so many of the speakers that you've heard up here say, I'm going to reiterate, I am so honored to have been asked to stand up here and to share my experiences with Alice. The other thing I just really want to say right now, only for Alice would I wear this much purple. So I had to get that out of the way. You know, we've heard lots of stories, and the irony of her family from Wisconsin, when I saw the picture of Mount Rushmore, my first experiences with Alice was on the Mount Rushmore of female teacher leaders that I became acquainted with. I don't know if any of you can remember Roberta Hollowell. I worked with Roberta Hollowell, Alice Waco, and Liz Basile. Now, if you wonder why I might be able to stand up here and speak, that should give you an idea. They would never take no for an answer. And Alice was always that way. But she did it in a fashion and in a manner that did not offset you at all. She made you feel important and taught you all along the way. And when I heard of her passing, I had gone in the day before and sat with her. She was in that coma stage. And I just held her hand and kept saying to her over and over, "Thank you. Do you know how many people you have inspired, you have mentored, and so many of them you have never met?" That is what is so important. And that is a legacy of Alice Waco's. She will live on forever because of those she touched in a one-on-one setting, and it inspired us so much that we continue doing that teaching. The Wednesday before she passed, she was at the Santa Rosa Democratic Club meeting. The program that evening was a panel of young people because she pushed for that. And how ironic. The last meeting she's attended is what she kept forcing and forcing. We need to hear the voices of young people. When the meeting was over, and I went over, as I always do, and spoke with her, she said, "Pat, that young girl," and I said, mentioned her name. She says, "Yes." She said, "Oh, there's such hope." I said, "I'm going to share that with her." And I did. I will let you know that young girl is the president of the Wine Country Young Democrats, and she put on an entire dinner last night, and I reminded her of what Alice had said, and she was so touched. I told her that the service, her memorial, was going to be today, and she was so touched. That is who Alice Waco is. She was a warrior. She inspired us. She mentored us. I cannot leave here without saying, as I walked precincts yesterday, let me tell you, Alice walked side by side with me and kept me going as I was getting hotter than hell. She, if she could have been, would have been physically there with me. And we know that she couldn't do things like that at the end, but she was capable of showing up at a rally, of talking with people, and holding people accountable. If we do nothing else in the memory of Alice Waco, it is recall. She stands beside us day by day and wants us all to be held accountable for this earth on which we live and for the humanity that we are a part of. Thank you. We now have a video.
introducing Coach Doug Smith, better known as Smitty, a very good friend of Alice's from Ridgeway High School.
I had this great speech wrote out, but I'm going to throw it out the door because everything's been said, I can only say. But I was a teacher for 25 years at Ridgeway High School, and Alice shared a great influence on Ridgeway High School. It went to being a school that had a lot of problems. Kids had a small amount of group, and they had a lot of problems. And my first year at Ridgeway High School, we had one student graduate and wore a little top and had her in a classroom. And when I left 25 years later, we had 45 graduates, a full ceremony. And what a fantastic thing to see. And Alice's influence was incredible. She was there for the first 10 years of the school, and we changed so many things along with the principal. Carol Dillon did a good job, and our whole staff came together, just like she's creating things everywhere. She created this environment that we all came together and helped the kids, and it was all for the kids. And it was one of the top joys of my life was working at Ridgeway High School and working with Alice Waco. So again, I can tell you a few little stories. This picture here is my 75th birthday, and there's some of my Ridgeway staff people who came along, and I was introducing, there was a bunch of people from all over the place, and I was making an introduction to each one of them. And so I was getting near the end, and one of the teachers in our group said, well, why you haven't mentioned Alice yet? And I said, no, I'm waiting for Alice at the end. Alice, not only did Alice influence my life tremendously, she married me and my late wife, and my late wife Sherry called her angel because of her massages, and she said, you not only got a massage, you got your life experience to help in the same time. So it's like you had a psychologist and somebody giving you back rub, so it was a great deal. And she also in turn married my daughter, my only daughter, and she's here today, and she's a principal, and my oldest grandchild is going to be a teacher. So it goes on with everything. It's just part of whatever life is about. And Alice, one more experience. The last thing that I went to, the first time I ever saw Alice and Bill McGee was at a teacher rally right in the middle of the strike. It was at Haworth Park, and it was raining. It was ugly. Everybody's in a bad mood. And Alice and Bill were sitting on that little rise up above everybody. When everybody was leaving, they was both arm in arm sitting under this umbrella. And you talk about the Statue of Liberty, or they had that look about them. And it's been on my mind. I keep going back to that, what that meant to me. And I came up with a couple things that were kind of corny, but I said it looked like Abraham Lincoln and Eleanor Roosevelt. And then I said, no, they're a lot more handsome than those people. Then I came up with a crazy one. I was going, well, I think they look like Clark Kent and Wonder Woman. And then I kept saying, well, truth, justice, and the American way is broken, so I couldn't go with that one. So the last one was, there's Bill McGee, Alice Waco, truth, justice, peace for everybody, warriors for good. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robin Latham from the Peace. Oh, that's okay. Do you want to come introduce her? Come on.
I'll act like
I was so fast, I apologize, Robin. Robin is the Peace and Justice Peace and Justice Chairman at Sonoma County, and I enjoyed all the times Alice always talked to me about the Peace and Justice group that she worked with was one of her highlights of her life. So thank you.
Hi. Boy, like everybody else said, it's such an honor to be up here. It's also an honor, and I'm also really touched that y'all picked International Day of Peace for this day. And I want to say how appropriate and wonderful that is. I'm just going to read a really short little paragraph that jumped out to me today, written by Jody Evans from Code Pink. It says, "To end violence and create the beautiful world that we so long to live in, we must radically reimagine and transform our relationships so they are defined by love." So even as I'm standing up here as a peace and justice person, I just want to say the thing that Alice brought to us at the center was her love. And everybody loved her, right? In fact, I thought she's that person that everybody says, oh, I felt like I was her best friend, and obviously mentored us all. And I think when I heard she was in the hospital, I cried the way I cried when my mother died. It was like, someone so important. But one of the things that happened in that little window when she had the stroke and was in the hospital was there was this wonderful outpouring on this email thread that I'm on with a lot of women. Thank you, Susan Lamont. And all these wonderful sound bites came out of these men and women's emails. And when she died, I was thinking the Peace and Justice Center needed to write something or have some sort of statement. And what happened was I took all those little sound bites and kind of threw them together. Honestly, I put it in AI and it wrote the worst poem. Really sucked. So I took it out and I did something myself. But I'm not going to take credit. I like to say I built this with the words of my fellow activist. To give voice to how we collectively creating the conditions for a global culture of lasting peace. Alice did that. Honoring Alice, angel of peace and warrior for justice. Alice was like a beacon, a presence that inspired trust, laughter, and deep respect. She lived with great intention. She held space for others and their thoughts, even when they conflicted with her own. She was always showing us how to live with a bigger heart. Alice could see clearly, and she walked her talk, always showing up to help. Her ability to show up was vast, all these circles, right? And her actions were brave. Even her actions as a speaker, she would say the thing that no one in the room wanted to say. Speaking truthfully and maintaining a fierce commitment to justice, Alice made the community and the world better simply by being here and made us all want to be better humans. To those of us who were lucky enough to work beside Alice, our hearts are broken, but the sadness is part of the imprint of her absence and the proof of her love. Alice's smile was radiant, and her eyes could sparkle with that mischief and with whatever ideas she was cooking up. She was not one to sugarcoat things, and she certainly wouldn't want us to be remembering her with syrupy cliches. That's why I threw away the AI poem. Her practicality was refreshing, and when talking about death, which I did with her sitting in that very chair on her porch after her birthday and before her stroke, I brought her flowers and some soup because she'd been in the hospital a couple times during the week, and we were laughing and making death jokes about how much money she just spent on fixing her teeth and probably what a waste of time it was going to be because she was going to die at any minute, which is actually really why I was there, because I was concerned with the hospital visits and everything. That, like people said, you kind of go, oh, I better go see her. She joked about getting the hell out of here. And I do want to say that I feel grateful that she's not living through this today. Not us loving her, but the outside world and the shit show it is. Yet, behind the wit, here's some more words from my activist friends. Yet behind the wit was a powerful awareness of what mattered. People, community, truth, and love. We're all saying these same things. She had a personal spark and a light that reflected her generosity, compassion, and groundedness. She shared her insights and wisdom as a good friend and a wise elder. In her final days, she continued to cause good trouble. That's who she was, fully herself, even when life threw curveballs. Her presence was always a benefit in every meeting, training, demonstration, or potluck, and her absence is palpable. It's been hard being at the center without her, knowing she wasn't going to be at the potluck or meeting. It's not easy to imagine the Peace and Justice Center without her. We're 41 years old now, and Alice is a big part of our being there still. And not just because she was a founder, but because she helped those of us who've been there when it was just standing on the last wobbly legs to keep it alive. She's a vibrant presence in all of us who carry her lessons forward. And as one person said, her departure is indeed an elegant exit. She didn't lead with words, but with examples. She's a brilliant star guiding us forward, living through us in our memories and everything she was, committed, courageous, thoughtful, humorous, generous of spirit, and so much more. So there is that traditional trademark question, what would Alice do? It's not a tagline, it's a real guidepost. But her legacy is personal and collective, and she helped us all imagine a better world. She's nudging us towards that. That's what's great. Well, that's what great souls do. So yes, we miss her. We miss her, we always will. And I just want to say these last words before I introduce Sonja Bedford, who's from the Ukraine Sister Cities Project that worked with Alice. And many of my activist friends will know when I say, Alice Waco, presente. Let's say that one more time. Alice Waco, presente. Thank you. Here's Sonja.
Thanks, Robin. I haven't cried yet, so if I start weeping. Today we stand for peace, especially on the International Day of Peace and this autumnal equinox. We say no to violence and no to war. And in Alice's name, Slava Ukraina. We said no to war when we fought for nuclear disarmament in the 70s and 80s. We said no to war when our government saw the USSR as enemies in the 80s. We said yes to teaching peace and started Teachers for Peace in Sonoma County. That's where I met Alice. Alice and I became hard and fast friends and then sisters in our fight to build Sonoma County Educators for Social Responsibility. We coordinated with a sister chapter in Boston in developing workshops and curriculum and expanded our work to Students for Social Responsibility. This love for teaching peace provided the fertile ground in which we grew the organization of sister cities, Santa Rosa, California, Cherkasy, Ukraine. This became the work of the 80s and the 90s, sending adults and students as ambassadors of peace into Ukraine. We were there for the aftermath of Chernobyl, the rise of independence and freedom for Ukraine, accompanying our friends to the voting poll for the first time when their ballots mattered. During our many trips into Ukraine and receiving Ukrainians in Santa Rosa, we celebrated International Women's Day and Earth Day, helped support a new women's center in met with businesses and governmental officials on both sides to establish our sister city ties officially. It is through our personal contacts that Alice and I kept ongoing communication and dialogue, even in these years of war. Alice was sister to Vera Sysoyeva, our Ukrainian counterpart who helped hatch the idea of sister cities, Santa Rosa, Cherkasy, and sister to Nadia Anayeva, previously head teacher of First City Gymnasium, Luda Tkachenko and Olga Potemkin, teachers. Others held dear to our hearts are Luda Rizayeva and Victoria Klemenko. Some of these women are now on this Zoom link from Ukraine. I hope, if they have internet connection. Two more very special Ukrainian women now living in California, also probably on Zoom, are Valya Royenko and Victoria Kuzmina. Alice and I met them in Cherkasy and had wonderful visits there and here. Alice is with us today in the spirit of all these women and the connections written on our hearts. In her famous poem, Still I Rise, Maya Angelou uses the enduring power of the sun, moon, and tides as metaphors for the steadfast and unyielding nature of hope. Angelou stated, "Hope and fear cannot occupy the same space. Invite one in to stay, let the other go." Sorry, Therese. I'm so proud to introduce Therese Mughannam. Sonoma County stands with Palestine.
Thank you. I didn't know Alice when she was doing all the spectacular things, her work in the world. So I will speak about how I experienced Alice living her life in the last decade when I got to know her. Her being, who she was, how she moved in the world. As I reflect on my experience of Alice, I'm reminded of what St. Francis said about preaching the gospel always and only using words when necessary. Alice certainly lived it. She moved in it. She breathed kindness and love for others in such ordinary, simple ways. She was like a light that shows the way in a complicated and often dark world. A consummate human being. Often when Alice and I would get together, she would get right into the latest atrocity in Gaza, or the West Bank, or Brazil, or Ukraine, or local or national government absurdities. It was astounding how up to date she was on important news. A true citizen of the world, always interested and curious, compassionate, and clear. She was always very supportive of me and my work for justice in Palestine, as well as all the other activists. Numerous times she joined us as we stood in the courthouse square with our signs and chants to end the genocide in Gaza. She would sit in her walker chair near the edge of the sidewalk, holding her sign, chanting with us, "Free, free Palestine!" Also, "From the river to the sea, everyone there will be free." It was very moving to me. Over the last several years, I would meet her at her home, what she's done with her home, the essence of generosity, and the simplicity of that little space she created for herself. The picture. The beauty outside, the picture of her dear Bill ever present. We would have a simple lunch. I introduced her to delicious Palestinian olive oil, and she introduced me to bulk shampoo at the at the community market where I took her to shop sometimes. I never knew such a thing existed. Alice's physical body is gone from us, but her presence remains among us. I sometimes find myself quietly calling to her, then sweetly feeling that she is near. In the tradition she and I shared and lived, however differently, Alice certainly was the good and faithful servant who has now entered the joy of another world. She held the light for us, and now it's our turn. Our world needs our light desperately. Thank you, Alice. Amen. Amen. Jim Wilder, you're on next, and Jim will speak about the Sunflower Connection.
I was asked to speak about Alice's time in Nicaragua. I'm not going to do that very much because her good friend, Sister Anabel Torres, wrote a beautiful letter about Alice's relationship with Cantera. And everybody who got an invitation from David will get that letter in an email, so I'm not going to repeat what was in it. In that letter, Annabelle also mentions Sister Mary Hartman, who originally came from Pennsylvania and went to Nicaragua in the late 80s for 1 year and spent the rest of her life there. So the three of them were a force to be dealt with. Mary Hartman has since died a few years ago. Unfortunately, Cantera was closed about 3 years ago as one of the 6,500 NGOs that were closed by the Ortega Murillo regime. So that gives me time to talk about something that happened between Alice and myself. It started in Nicaragua. And about 14 years ago, my wife, Savita, who's here somewhere, we told Alice we were returning to Nicaragua, and she said we must spend some time with her friends. And then in passing, she said, they're nuns. I was stunned. My only experience with nuns were hearing about my friends' experience in school getting their knuckles wrapped by wrinkly old penguins. They probably deserved it, I'm sure they did. But we trusted Alice, and we went down, and we were met by Mary Hartman and Annabelle. hands, arms wide open, and not a ruler in sight. Over the next few days, we toured what they were doing, community development and farms, and we saw how everybody just welcomed them and just revered them. The last night there, Mary Hartman had gone to around the corner where some home of retired nuns where they were having a little private mass. And she returned and yelled out the window of the truck, Jim Savita, you gotta come with me. Well, we couldn't refuse a polite invitation like that. So we climbed in the truck and went with her down there, and they had just finished mass and were sitting down to a meal called Witthohn, which was they've had a meal, and we sat down and ate with them, and then 5 young seminarians got up and started playing music, Bésame Mucho and Piel Canela and things like that. And all of a sudden, one nun comes over to me and grabs my hand and stands me up and starts dancing with me. And then before the song was over, just as the song was over, she goes over and another nun comes over and grabs my hand and starts dancing with me. And I look over in Savita, and I don't know who was laughing more. There I am, dancing salsa with an old wrinkly nun in her habit. Amazing. And she had the biggest smile on her face. And I fell in love with all 6 of those nuns. And it's a cute story, and I've told it a lot of times with a lot of glee. But it wasn't until I got back and talked with Alice that I learned the story. I told it to her, and she, that's cute. What did you learn from it? I learned nuns are human. An inside answer, or outside answer, I should say. And I had seen Alice regularly. She was mentoring me on my sunflower project, because every Tuesday I played cribbage right half a block from her house, and I would stop in and we would talk. My project is about using the sunflower as a unifying symbol of resistance against you-know-who. And she would mentor me on that. So a couple weeks later, I went back and had thought a lot about what she was trying to tell me. The inside answer was not nuns were human. It was I had a prejudice. I had ignorance. And so I was reflecting on that in what else was I ignorant about in my life? What other prejudices did I hold? And Alice and I talked about this. And it was every prejudice we hold, every ignorance we have is like losing color. It's like becoming colorblind. And your life becomes more black and white, more black and white. And even this morning at 6 o'clock, I was laying there in bed trying to think about what prejudices do I hold? Is it people with what music they listen to, how they voted? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Is it a moral question or is it a prejudice? I still don't have an answer for that one. I can always maybe say, I don't talk to him about that. I find something we have in common. I have decided that I can accept old ladies with purple in their hair, and I can even have a little color in my hair once in a while, all because of one amazing Alice Waco. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Tosya Shore, the loveliest werewolf I have ever met.
Thanks a lot. Hi, Alice, fellow fans, look at this crowd. It's absolutely outstanding. I'm a werewolf. I'm up here to talk about Alice as a werewolf. Maybe that's one of the things that has not come up yet. Excuse me. I actually met Alice for the first time, Alice and Bill, when my late husband and I got to join the werewolves. And I'm looking out and seeing other werewolves here, which is thrilling. There's about 28 of us left. We were prime, maybe, something like that. And so when I met her, as you guys have already been saying, you just get captivated by Alice. Those incredibly, I think you mentioned the sparkle eyes, the ever-present smile, and then that hair that matches her. And I don't know if you noticed that she dressed me today. I've got I got my Alice coat on, even my Birkenstocks. And it doesn't take many times when you're with her to understand, is what everybody has already been saying, her passion of giving and people and pulling people together and love and her heart. And you just know that that love that she has is so contagious, you can't help but love her a tremendous amount. And all of us werewolves did, even though we're werewolves. Well, okay, so what is a werewolf? We're actually a running club, and there's Alice is the second one in, and obviously you know Bill, Kathy Gilliam, Edie, Roland, they're all werewolves. And werewolves, we meet at the full moon, every full moon, since this started in the 70s, the early 70s, meet at the full moon at Spring Lake, run around Spring Lake, and then all take a potluck to somebody's house. So maybe you think we're really a running, eating, drinking club. Well, you're right. But actually, I'd say in the last 15 years, I'm the youngest, by the way, we're more of a eating, drinking club now. But so it's a very exclusive club. It's invitation only, and you have to be a runner. So how did Alice and Bill join? Well, it was actually Bill was running in their neighborhood and ran into Judy Dieter. I don't know if I see her. I know she's around. So, and they started chatting, and well, they ran into each other, you know, pun intended, of course. And they ran into each other a few times to where Judy invited Bill and Alice to become werewolves. So that's how they became werewolves. So Alice and Bill were consummate runners. They loved running. And as club members, they would host many of our potlucks. That was really about what we did as a club, was have potlucks and run. So, excuse me, my mouth is getting dry. Pardon me. It's all that running. So, oh yes, and their beautiful garden. Somebody else mentioned their beautiful garden, that they would host us in their beautiful garden, and then even when Bill was gone, that she would host us for our werewolves togetherness. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this club. There's no agenda, there's no officers, there's no dues. We don't do anything but what I described, but there's one very, very important ritual that I'm going to close with, and I'm hoping you'll join me. And I'm looking at the werewolves right out here, and they're going to help. Well, and there's Marg right there. There's Ellen. There's others all over. So can actually every werewolf just raise your hand? You don't have to stand up because we're really old. Okay, these are all werewolves. So we've got a pretty good contingent here. Yay. So in closing, I want you all to join me in this important ritual. It's how werewolves want to say how much they thank Alice for being our angel on earth and now our angel beyond. But we need to give her a hearty howl. And so I'm going to count to 3, and after 3, we're going to share the werewolf love with Alice. 1, 2, 3. Ow! We love you, Alice.
Well, this concludes our speakers. Now, we promised that we would have an open mic for a few minutes. So this is where those of you who have something really, really burning to say, come up and we'll give you each between 30 seconds and a minute. Okay, so no long speeches. If anybody would like to come up, please do. We have one. Oh, Mr. Gelati. How do I know your name? Everybody knows you, Mr. Gelati.
Pat.
Okay,
Thank
you have 30 seconds.
Can I use this mic here?
I'm going to use this
You're
mic and
gonna
I'm
hold the
going to
mic.
hold it.
It's going to pull me off here in a second, I think.
Go ahead.
I'll just share very shortly. I had this idea to build a peace wall in Sebastopol, but the city council in Sebastopol was kind of resistant, some of them. So I needed to have some credibility. So I went to the Peace and Justice Center, and I said, would you become part of a selection committee so we can make this happen? Immediately, Alice raised her hand, and Paul Robbins. They both raised their hands immediately. So for the past 10 years, those two and some other folks have been on the selection committee. I'm not sure the wall would have got built if it weren't for Alice. And then she mentored me and encouraged me because there was a lot of obstacles to get this thing done. So I want to thank her for that, and that's about it.
And if you ever visit Sebastopol, you should definitely go to see the Peace Wall. Alice's name is right there. It's amazing. She would not allow her name to be put on there until she was dead. Well, she was only dead a couple of days, and that name was there. Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim McGonigal. I'm Alice's only friend from Orange County. And Alice asked me to speak at Bill's funeral, and she introduced me as her only Republican friend from Orange County. Anyway, but what I wanted to say was, the day after she died, I drove up to the Santa Rosa hospital to get her body and to get it delivered to UCF. And I went up to the front desk and I said, I'm here to collect a body. And he said, who? And I said, Alice Waco. The security guard, not knowing me, not knowing Alice, said, you won't believe how many people have come in here to say goodbye to her, and they all had the most incredible stories about her. And I said, well, that's who Alice was. She was incredible. She was a great friend. I got married by Bill, and I got married by Alice. My first wife passed away with cancer. Bill and Alice came and stayed with me and my kids for about a month, and so known them a long time.
Kim McGonigal. Linda Reed.
Hello. Alice and Billy married all four of my children in our yard. And when we met Alice through Billy, in that my husband was taking Latin, which I eventually did too from Billy. And we met Alice, and I don't think that Alice was really sure that Harry and I were really that worthy. You know, she was a beautiful person, but she was also, you know, she wanted you to be worthy. And but she eventually came to love us just as we loved her. When Billy passed, we wore signs. We put signs on the back of our vehicles for a couple of years that said, what would Billy do? I think it's time for a sign that says, what would Alice do?
And we have one. Fred Patucha.
Here at Christ Church, one of the most significant events of my life occurred. I was representing parents in the teacher strike, and Alice was on the union. So people were dug in. It was really divisive. And then as a former nun, Alice said, you know, we're fighting so much, we've got to pray. And so I think I can make that happen. Our minister, Bob Olmsted, and I asked Bob, would you be willing to host at Christ Church a prayer meeting to settle the strike? He said, sure. There were some people here, teachers, and there were two school board members there, and they walked out after 2 hours of tears and heartfelt sharing, and I heard them in the parking lot and said, we didn't realize how desperately the teachers wanted to be back in the classroom with those kids. The next day, the strike was settled. it'll settle here, but I mean, it happened, the breakthrough happened because those two superintendent or members of the school board realized how desperately the teachers wanted to be back in the room with those kids. So it took Alice as a nun to say, what we're doing isn't working, we've got to pray on it, and that helped make it happen.
Okay, anyone else? Jeannie, please.
Just a quick one. It's kind of like a metaphor for me because in 1980, Alice and I climbed up to the Mount Shasta and saw the sunrise. And I thought, wow, what it takes to climb every mountain. And that's what she did. She was always going upward to the light. Peace be with us all.
All right, thank you. Just a few last words from our friend Lindsay Kerr. It is so good. I'm sorry. We're good? Yes. It is so good to hear so many things about Alice's life today. A human life, particularly this human's life, is so full and so multifaceted. None of us could know her completely, but now, having heard from others, we know her more clearly. But according to Ignacio Eyacura, a Jesuit martyr of El Salvador, there is only one thing that we need to know after someone is gone. He says, may we live our lives so that when we die, they will say that we engaged in the crucial struggle of our time. Alice lived long enough to span many different times, and she, of course, was engaged in crucial struggles in each of them. The struggle for justice, the struggle for equality, and above all, the struggle for peace. Her presence in these struggles, her courage, her wisdom, her friendship, her love was above all a gift to us. It was a gift for Lindsay Kerr, a gift she imagines for each of us. And now, in her parting, Alice has a final gift for us. She is giving us space. She is giving us room for each of us to step up, for each of us to grow, for each of us to foster a little more of that radical Holy Spirit that Alice Waco magnified in the world. So just before we go from here, I want you to take a moment and draw to mind that one radical action, that one courageous step, that one phone call, that one invitation, that one conversation, that moment in which you can take a stand against the present political tide and be a beacon for peace. Remember that one action, that one step, and share it with someone else while you're breaking bread out in the labyrinth today. And then I invite you to do it this coming week. No, not because it's what Alice would do, but it's because of what you can do. Because this is how we participate in the crucial struggle of our time, one step, one action at a time. I hope you'll stick around and share this conversation with one another. I hope you'll take a moment and share your own stories of Alice's life. I hope you'll do that for years to come. And now Lindsay has asked us to stand as she sends us forth with this blessing by St. Francis of Assisi, quite the radical peace-loving lover himself. And if you'd like to say it, also, that would be great. Make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Mother, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. And now, as we finish, one last song. And if you could turn to someone and hold their hand, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. And we'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in